This is sort of my simple bar graph of the findings of the evidence study. So there were more patients on gastroprotection that had an event than patients off gastroprotection. This is the raw result of the trial. And how does that work? Well, physicians preferentially prescribe gastroprotection to high-risk patients. You would too. I mean, if you had a very complicated patient with 2 bleeding events in the history, and you could not avoid giving that patient non-steroidals, you'd be loading them up with any gastroprotective drug you had. Whereas if you had the young patients without a history and nothing going on, you might say, well, I don't have to prescribe this drug to these patients. So patients on gastroprotective agents in an observational study have a higher risk right from the start, even before they started the drug. And also, we have to remind ourselves that gastroprotection, of course, is not 100% effective in preventing all events. So let's look at this little thing in more detail. Let's suppose we have high risk and low risk patients in like numbers, and high-risk patients without treatment, have a risk of 50% ulcers after 1 year, and low-risk patients only have a risk of 30%. Let's suppose this is the case. And there are equal proportions of high and low-risk patients in the study. Now, what happens if protection is uniform in giving 30% reduction in all patients? The 50% will go down to 35%. And the 25% will go down to 18% in these risk strata. Yeah, so the drug is working. Okay, next step. Suppose physicians only prescribe GI protection in patients with high risk, and they never prescribe protection in patients with low risk. What happens then? Well, the patients on GI protection, they get their protection, they go to 35%. But the other patients, they don't get protection, so they stay at their base rate. And now you can see that the patients on GI protection in the observational study results are higher, like we saw. So this is exactly what confounding by indication is. And I made the example a little bit more extreme, but this is the mechanism. If you have risk factors that preferentially guide patients to a certain treatment, then the risk of that treatment will be confounded by the risk that was there before you started the treatment.
If you want, next time we could make one talk in French about different bias.
I could do it in French, but it would be difficult because then I miss the words, so then it becomes very slow, a lot of